I've always said that the world would be a better place if more people acted like dicks. Alright, hello YouTube, Derek Shoehorn here for life advice. Before I get into this week's questions, I just got a couple of follow-up points from last week's video. I don't know if it's me not expressing myself clearly enough. That seems very unlikely. I would imagine the confusion probably lies mostly at your end. But nonetheless, I'm going to try and clarify a couple of things here. First of all, the reason why a 12-egg omelet is immune to haunting is something I probably should have explained in that video. It's just simply that ghosts, they have a low threshold for protein. They require it as much as the rest of us, but their threshold is too low to be able to tolerate a 12-egg omelet. So the moment they see it as 12 eggs in an omelet or more, they leave it alone. They steer clear of that. Alright, and that's also the same reason why if you cut it in half, obviously then you've essentially got two 6-egg omelets, and either of those is susceptible to be haunted because ghosts can handle 6 eggs. And the second point on that, the questioner got back in touch and said that he was experiencing a few little side effects from my 12-egg omelet recommendation, mainly in the department of constipation, which is a common problem, but it's very easily solved. I wouldn't worry about it. Definitely don't stop eating the 12-egg omelets. That's the last thing you want to do. Keep up with the 12-egg omelets, but just also at the same time have a coffee and maybe 1, 2, or even 3 cigarettes, and that should loosen you up and get you moving for the day. Oh, and also right at the end of last week's video, I did say something about morbid obesity not being that big a problem because you can deal with it in the future. I have actually been alerted to a technology called stomach stapling, which I hadn't heard of before. I looked into that a little bit, and it does appear that far from what I said about just putting it off to the future, it is actually possible now to nip that in the bud. Alright, so I hope that clears up those points. Like I say, it's unlikely that the problem is with me, it's more likely with you, but I'm always happy to go over these things again for my own benefit. Alright, so with all that being said, let's get right into today's questions. Derek, I need some advice on recovery from shoulder injuries. At a recent vigil in London, I was pinned to the ground by a police officer, and I now have severe pain in both shoulders. It was worth it, but I'm worried that my days of attending vigils will now be over if I don't rehabilitate properly. Any advice would be much appreciated. And that is from Cressida Dick. Well, Cressida, thanks for the question. I'm very sorry to hear about your shoulder injury, but good for you for attending the vigil. I think it's a great thing that women like you are out there on the streets campaigning for your freedom. I think that's a great thing, and we need more women like you in the world. And I would also like to take this opportunity to say to you directly, Cressida, just don't listen to your detractors. I know you're getting a lot of criticism right now. I think it's wholly unwarranted and also misogynistic. I don't know if these people even realize that you are a woman, but women are the victims here, and I don't agree with victim blaming, so I think people should lay off Cressida Dick right now. I've always said that the world would be a better place if more people acted like dicks. And as far as rehabilitation from the shoulder injury goes, it's not that hard. There's a pretty simple stretch. You've probably seen it before, where you just hold your hands behind your back and stretch your shoulders back like this. That's a pretty good one for the shoulders if you can do it as much as possible throughout the day. The only problem is it's kind of easy to forget and to get a little bit lazy and to let the hands hang by the sides. So I think it's pretty obvious what you got to do in that situation, which is just simply put yourself in handcuffs and walk around like that for a few weeks, and that should clear up your shoulder problem. Alright, so give that a whirl, see how that works for you, and any problems, don't hesitate to get back in touch. Alright, good luck with it, Cressida. Derek, now that the age of the pandemic is drawing to a close and the normalcy of mass hysteria has begun to return, I find myself reflecting on this past historic year and wondering about my role in it. Like all right-thinking people, I have sacrificed my mental health for the cause, but I'm ashamed to admit that I never actually contracted COVID-19. Will history look kindly upon me? And that is from Fox in Antarctica. Well, Fox, that's a perfectly valid question. I think a lot of us have been wondering the same thing about how the history books will reflect on this time. And I do think you have a real concern there if you haven't had COVID-19. I actually had it myself, so I'm pretty sure I'll go down as one of the heroes. But you, if you haven't had it yet, that could be a problem. Although, one thing I would recommend is try to write some poetry. If the experiences of the First World War conscientious objectives Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen are anything to go by, in the short term you probably will be portrayed as a traitor and a coward. Then over time your poetry could come to redeem your reputation. Of course, you will probably be long dead by then, but it's good to know that there's something left behind. And the other thing is, it's not too late to catch COVID-19. It's still around, as we're being told regularly. Admittedly, you might have a bit of a problem, being as you are in Antarctica. It's pretty hard to contract down there, but it's not impossible. There's been cases of COVID-19 on fishing boats that have been out at sea for weeks. There's been cases of people who have had absolutely no contact with any human being picking it up, so it's not impossible. So do keep trying. It's going to take a little bit of luck, but as Gary Player famously said, the more you practice, the luckier you get. People often forget that he was actually sitting in front of a fruit machine when he said that, but nonetheless, it still applies. I think if you do practice getting out there and rubbing up against anyone you can, I know it's pretty tough in Antarctica, but see who you can find. There must be some community of scientists down there or something like that. Just hang out with them as much as you can, practice catching diseases, and hopefully eventually you'll get lucky, catch COVID-19, and the history books will judge you kindly. Derek, I recently paid $69 million for a non-fungible token. My friend talked me into it at an auction, but in the cold light of day, I'm experiencing more than a little buyer's remorse. Do you think I might be eligible for a refund? And that is from Gary Player in Florida. Well, Gary, I feel for you here. We've all done it. We've all been out to an auction or an art show, maybe had a glass of champagne, and the next thing you know, we bought a piece of art that we didn't necessarily expect to be buying when we went out the house. Alright, so we've all done it. I had a friend once who did it. I remember he turned up at the bar, having been at this art show, and the words he was saying were that of someone who's just bought a piece of art, but his manner and his disposition was that of someone who's dropped their phone in the toilet. Unfortunately, I think it is probably too late for a refund. These kind of things, they don't offer refunds lightly, especially when you're talking about a large amount of money. But on the plus side, what you got to remember is, yes, it's true that the NFT you bought, the non-fungible token, doesn't exist, but that's also true of the money that you paid for it with. That doesn't exist either. They're both just numbers on a screen. So that's something positive you can take away. You haven't really lost anything. Alright, so I'm sorry it's not better news. You don't qualify for a refund. Hopefully maybe you just learned some lessons from this. Maybe don't have that glass of champagne next time you go to the auction. Alright, so that's it for this week, guys. If you got a question for me, just leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you in the next video. Keep growing. No cheat days.